So far, we have been discussing the complete system, the pulse coded modulation technique. All these are examples of waveform encoding, where be it the standard PCM, which uh, assumed that actually no correlation between adjacent samples. Okay, so this was our standard PCM, which in fact uh, utilized quantization as uniform or non-uniform. Okay, so both we discussed at a length. Then we said that in case of reality, in case of speech or voice related applications, where we need to digitize these signals, there would be a strong correlation between adjacent samples. Okay, so and hence we modified the standard PCM, and we called one of the first system as DPCM, stands for differential pulse coded modulation scheme. This actually increased with complexity compared to standard PCM, but this was efficient in utilizing the bandwidth, the transmission bandwidth, or simply the bandwidth. So in other words, this actually compressed the original signal. Okay, then some cases or some applications require simpler systems, and you can pay the price for increasing in bandwidth, and such system that we also discussed in the last class, which was delta modulation or delta modulator. Okay, so in short it was termed as DM. Okay, and sometimes it is also denoted as delta modulator in this way. As there are only two levels, as we saw, it would be plus delta or minus delta. Okay, and this was simpler than these two systems, and bandwidth is increased by intentionally oversampling the original message signal. So the original message signal is sampled much higher rater than the Nyquist rate itself, and hence we'll have more samples, and hence more number of bits are required to represent each of the samples. And we also saw yesterday that fixed delta would not be sufficient for all the cases. In sense, it actually produced two types of errors. One was slope overload distortion, and another one was granular noise. Okay, so wherein slope overload distortion was when delta is very small, where it takes time to catch up with a large slope of the message signal. Granular noise arises because of flat regions of the message signals where a delta would be too large. Okay, so to make this variable delta or variable step size, we went for adaptive delta modulator. Okay, so this adaptive delta modulator used simple logic involved there. Okay, so that logic that was used, say something like this, where current step size is dependent on the previous step size exponential raised to the error involved in present sample and the previous sample. So based on whether it is positive or negative, accordingly it is scaled. Okay, so if it is negative, it is scaled down. If it is positive, it is scaled up. Okay, so that was the logic used in case of ADM, adaptive delta modulator. So these are the different PCM techniques that we have studied so far. All these are part of waveform encoding techniques. Okay, where we took the message signal waveform, because we should have the information of the message signal, then we could able to sample and quantize according to the scheme dealt in each of these systems. In contrast to this waveform encoding system, or simply waveform coding system, we will talk about simply waveform coding, because of we did not talk much about encoder. Okay, so in contrast to this waveform coding technique, there is another method which is used in practice, is known as analysis by large. It is known as analysis synthesis technique. One class of this analysis synthesis technique is known as linear predictive coding. Okay, so that is a part of today's discussion, predictive coding, and in shorthand it is known as LPC. This method is based on the model of the mechanism that produces the waveform. Okay, this is not with respect to the waveform or the actual information of the message signal. This actually builds a mathematical model which is more robust. Okay, mathematical model which actually based on the mechanism that produces the waveform. Okay, it's kind of mimics the original source itself. If you can mimic the original source itself, then it is easy to transmit, or you will have more amount of freedom to play around the process itself. Okay, so this is the highlight of this linear predictive coding. Okay, so the parameters involved in this mathematical model will not be sending the actual samples of the message signal. To be to be precise, we will be sending the parameters of the model. The parameters of the model. Okay, these are extracted, okay, from the source, which are extracted from the source are quantized. Okay, then these are encoded, the usual process, and transmitted. Okay, so we are not actually sending the actual samples of the message signal. However, we will be building a mathematical model based on the system that produces, or the origin of the message signal itself. In our case, in particular, with respect to voice or speech signal, and hence those parameters of the model which are obtained from the mechanism, those are quantized, encoded, and transmitted. Okay, so this is the highlight of this particular technique. At the receiving end, so if these parameters are transmitted at the receiving end, exactly the same model is synthesized. Okay, so this is your analysis part. Okay, so this is your analysis part. So in synthesis at the receiver, okay, this model is again reconstructed, which used to generate an output similar to the original waveform. Okay, so this synthesis part, this is used to generate an output in similar to the original waveform. Okay, so this is, in other words, this is known as analysis synthesis technique. So one class of that, as I told, is linear predictive coding, and that is sometimes also known as voice coder or vocoder. Okay, so in LPC is I'll try to elaborate on this LPC part now, where the speech is produced as a result of, as you know, that the speech signal or the voice itself, as you know. Okay, since we will be building a mathematical model, we should know the mechanism by which the speech signal is produced. So it's kind of an example or an application involved linear predictive coding, which will be clear whatever I'm telling in generic. The speech signal, we should know how it is generated. As we all know that the mechanism involved here can be modeled as this speech signal, complete mathematical, origin of the speech signal can be modeled as a simple time varying filter. Okay, this can be simply modeled as a time varying filter. The filter itself is our vocal tract. Okay, so the filter is our vocal tract, which is excited by a signal generator. Okay, so the vocal tract here is a combination of several other elements in the human system, where vocal tract is composition of our throat, okay, the mouth, okay, it could be the no, definitely it's a tongue, and our lips, and so on. And could be, if you're involved with certain sounds involving nose, then also you can say all these human body or human parts are composition of our vocal tract. They change, these parameters change, the in the sense, if I say throat is a parameter, one of the parameters, these parameters, they change during the generation of the speech. Okay, so therefore the vocal tract is modeled as a time varying system. Okay, all these parameters vary with respect to time. Okay, accordingly we produce a speech or a voice sound. Okay, the properties of this excitation signal is highly depend on the type of speech sounds. Okay, so these parameters basically they are highly depend, whether it is increasing or decreasing with respect to time. It basically depends on the excitation of the speech sound itself. These excitation of the speech sound, this excitation of speech sound, okay, this can be, as we know, this can be either voiced or unvoiced. Okay, as I speak here, I would be see, I can make a sound which doesn't convey anything. It could be or a certain non-voice pauses. So the speech sounds involve either a voice sounds, or it could be an unvoiced sound. Okay, so for voiced speech, the excitation can be modeled as a periodic sequence of pulses. Say for voice, it could be kind of periodic a sequence of impulses. Okay, so the voiced speech could be simply a train of impulses, which could be a periodic, say with a frequency, I can say with say f0 roughly, and which depends on the speaker himself, okay, or herself. Okay, so this period, how fast I speak or how slow I speak, definitely depends on the person who is speaking. Obviously, the inverse of the speech frequency is known as pitch period. Okay, there is meaning of listing of all these important points. For unvoiced speech, however, there is no information, or it could be regarded as simply as a noise, and we consider such noise or unvoiced speech sound as white noise. As white indicates here, the noise is constant, or the power spectral density of this noise is constant for all frequencies. So white color indicates it is it has all the frequencies. And similarly, I can say this unvoiced noise contains all the noise involved in speech sounds. Okay, so this complete model, which by understanding the generation or the process how the speech is generated or the voice is generated, we can try to model the speech generation mechanism. With this, I can try to sketch our speech generation mechanism. Okay, just summary of whatever that we have discussed so far can be simply be drawn as, okay, say there is a white noise generator, there is the excitation signal also has some voiced signal, and this is connected to the person who is speaking. Okay, yeah. So this is actually between the voiced and unvoiced signals. Sorry. So I can write this could be your white noise. Okay, this could be a white noise generator, and this is a periodic or a voice signal. So it's a periodic impulse generator. Okay, and this switches between these two, and hence I can say that this is connected to a switch. This is connected to a switch, and whatever the speech generated, as I told, it depends on the speaker. The speaker will amplify, or he tries to suppress with his own nature of the vocal tract. So we can model that, the dependency of the speaker with a parameter known as gain. Okay, then this is connected to, then this is connected to a filter or vocal tract itself. Okay. As I told, our vocal tract is a filter. In particular, with respect to the type of filter, is actually a low pass filter, or in technical words it is known as all pole filter. Basically this is a low pass filter. Okay, and this is how your speech signal is generated. Okay, so this is the crux of our discussion of linear predictive coding. Okay, so what we'll be transmitting from the transmitter, will be basically transmitting these parameters, all the filter coefficients of the filter, the all pole filter itself, and there is a parameter known as gain. We'll have to transmit the gain as well, in the sense we need to quantize and encode and then transmit these parameters, such that the receiver also tries to synthesize at its own end. Okay, so the basically with this idea behind, we can mathematically or analytically try to understand the process involved in this all this mechanism, where this figure can be mathematically be written as, say, if xn is the output which is actually represents with the involvement of all these parameters, this is actually can be written as G, which is the gain, times W suffix n, where n represents the sample at nth, nth, this is actually the nth sample, where G represents the gain, Wn represents in fact the input sequence, either it could be white noise or impulses. I'll write that for the sake of clarity. This denotes the input sequence. Okay, so it could be white noise, or it could be unvoiced or simply voiced, in other words, or it could be impulses. Okay, so then it is passed through a filter with we can say the order of the filter is P. Then in general I can say that it's a summation of all the coefficient multiplied with the previous values, and hence this is a linear predictive coding, where the current sample is dependent on all the previous samples, or it's a linear combination of all past inputs, and hence we try to predict the current sample based on the previous samples which are which are added, or which are actually the superpositions of all the previous samples multiplied by the coefficients, where the factor G is the gain parameter, and the AI, whichever I have denoted there, this AI is actually, all AIs are filter coefficients. Okay, and P is the order of the filter, or I can say it's number of poles of the filter. Okay, of the filter, I can say this is simply the order of the filter. Okay, and hence, as I told, this process is linear predictive coding because of this expression, where the current sample is linear combination, or the current prediction of the sample is a linear combination of the previous all past inputs with respect, multiplied with respect to the filter coefficients themselves. Okay, so this is the basic idea behind LPC. I'll try to, we'll try to elaborate this. We'll not just stop with just a conceptual treatment of this. We'll try to elaborate on what is involved in the complete process. The speech signals are known to be stationary for short periods of time. Whenever I speak, I'll not be continuously speaking. Each sample is thought of to be stationary for short periods of time, so that in short periods of time is considered is very short amount, in the order of around 20 to 30 milliseconds. Okay, so so actual practical parameters, we can say the speech signals are stationary. By large, they are stationary random processes, okay, of short periods of time. Okay, this will help us, giving a big complete picture of this, of short periods of time. Okay, so this time, this period would be around, say, 20 to 30 milliseconds. Although it is random, I can say that it is a kind of a uniform replication of all these parameters involved in this mathematical model. Say roughly the period would be around 20 to 30 milliseconds. So whatever period I was saying here, which is the inverse of frequency of these periodic sequences, that pitch period is nothing but this 20 to 30 milliseconds. Okay, this is known from observation of all the speech signals in general. The characteristic behavior follows from the observation that the vocal tract cannot change instantaneously. I cannot change my the combinations of all these parameters instantaneously. It takes little amount of time. The time involved here is around in the order of 20 to 30 milliseconds of intervals. Okay, and for this duration, for 20 to 30 milliseconds, we can assume the filter coefficients to be, for this duration, the filter coefficients can be assumed to be fixed or constant for this duration of time. At the encoder, we observe 20 to 30 milliseconds record to speech, from which we try to estimate the model parameters. So we'll have little amount of time, say about 20 to 30 milliseconds of time at the encoder to estimate all the filter coefficients. Okay, so with that, we'll have estimation of all these coefficients, all these AIs within the period. Okay, so we'll have time to compute or to find out what could be appropriate values of these coefficients, which is trying to model the speech signal. Okay, right. So with this, if you try to say with specific values, if you are interested, say if the speech signal is filtered to say 3 kilohertz. Say if the speech signal, just with for better clarity, say if the speech signal, say if it is filtered to say 3 kilohertz and sampled say at a rate of around say 8,000 samples per second. Okay, then we can what I mean by all this is the signal samples, whatever the samples which are produced by second. Say there are 8,000 samples which are produced by the signal per second. Then each of these signal samples are subdivided further, where I say all these 8,000 samples, say this is 1 second of duration. Okay, if this is 1 second of duration, there are 8,000 samples involved in this 1 second of duration. I'll try to split this complete 8,000 samples into sub blocks, where I'll try to subdivide into blocks of 160 samples. Say this each block. Okay, assume that each block has about 160 samples. Okay, so what should be the duration of each block? Can anybody tell? If I try to divide complete 8,000 samples into 160 samples a piece within a second of duration, what could be the duration of each block? What is the interval of each block?
50.
50. Right. So it's around 50 milliseconds. Okay, and 50, let's say, yeah, around 8,000 samples, and it's around 50 milliseconds of intervals. Okay, so this each block which I consider are tried to encode. Okay, so we'll have around although I had said it's around 20 to 30 milliseconds. With this, whatever the data that I have taken here, it is giving me around 50 milliseconds of duration. Okay, so in other words, if you try to divide with more amount of less amount of samples, you may arrive at around pitch period of around 20 to 30 milliseconds. Okay, so roughly it is giving me a value very close to whatever we have assumed in earlier. So that if I try to model with a perspective of this concept, we can try to say how we can estimate the coefficients of this filter. Okay, so the analysis or the part of linear predictive coding is the crux of this mathematical approach. The linear prediction is used actually to determine the filter coefficients. Our job is to, as I told, to estimate. The first job, in fact, is to estimate the filter coefficients. How it is done? Okay, at the encoder, obviously, because I have taken this analysis part. Okay, so this linear predictor of order p is the number of poles, or the order of or the number of coefficients involved in the filter itself. Then I can say the estimation at the output x and hat, which is termed as the output of the filter, with the input xn, actually is a combination of all previous samples multiplied with the filter coefficients. And obviously, so this is for all n varying between 1 and n. So what is this capital N? Now capital N is actually the number of samples in each block, as you can say. So where n is number of samples in each block.
So that will be 20 milliseconds, sorry, not 50 milliseconds.
Come on to 20.
20 blocks, 50 blocks of 20 milliseconds.
50 blocks of 20 milliseconds. Yeah. So what I told, it should have been, I thought this will give me around that value. Yeah, so total number of blocks here, 160 into 50 will give me 8,000. Yeah, that's correct. So 160 into 50 will give me 8,000, and 1 second over 50 is actually 20 milliseconds. Yeah, sorry, I didn't cross verify that. Yeah, all right. So the I have considered was slightly different, but it is very close to what we have assumed. What we have assumed as pitch period to be around 20 to 30 milliseconds. Okay, so this number of samples in each block here, 160 samples in each block, is for every sample we are going to estimate based on the previous samples. So I'll have just first this sample for this block, the first block which is taken for the 20 milliseconds of duration. We take all the 160 samples. We take say for one sample, estimation of one sample is based on all the previous samples. Obviously, for the first block, there will be history of the samples will be very less. Say for the first sample itself, there is no information of the previous sample, and hence for the 160th sample, you will have the samples of all 160 samples to be estimated. With recursive algorithm for all the blocks, we can keep on finding out the estimate of the current sample. Okay, so with that we can assume we can say that, or we have assumed that, as I was saying, we have assumed that xn is equal to 0. The sample value is 0 if it is outside the interval of interest. Okay, I can say the sample value is 0 outside the interval of interest. Okay, can be specific, be like that. All right, the difference between the actual sample, say xn was the actual sample, xn hat is a estimated sample or the predicted sample. The difference between them, obviously we have done this in case of DPCM as well. The difference between them is actually the prediction error. So this error En, the prediction error. Okay, so what we are trying to do will be evident, don't worry. So the prediction error is the difference, the actual difference between the original sample and the estimated sample itself. And we have taken xn hat as linear combination of the previous samples, ak times xn minus k. Okay, in order to extract as much information as possible from the previous values, from the previous samples, we choose the coefficients, all these coefficients AIs, so that the average of the squared error term is minimum. So again, I repeat, we'll be estimating. Our job is not to estimate the sample. Remember, that was the part of DPCM where we were trying to estimate based on the previous sample because of there was a correlation between adjacent samples. But we are not estimating the actual message sample here. Our job is to quantize the filter coefficients themselves because we are trying to build a mathematical model. So our job is to choose or extract so many coefficients or AIs such that this error or the squared error is minimum. So again, this is minimum square error, the process or the least mean square error kind of logic that we are going to use to extract the information of or to predict the actual filter coefficients. Okay, to say this, I mean how we are trying to pass through this filter, because I'll try to zoom in into the filter part here where this xn, okay, this should be known to you. I'll try to zoom in into the filter part. Okay, say xn is is incoming, and as you know, all 4 filters are nothing but the delay units. I can say Z inverse or delay of 1 unit as t is equal to 1. We have used Z inverse. So this is nothing but Z inverse saying there is a delay of 1 unit. Then I'll have xn minus 1, the previous sample, and this is again fed to another delay block. Say t is equal to 1 unit delay, and so on. This produces xn minus 2 and so on, and finally if it's a order p, so we'll have so many delay blocks, and hence the final output is actually and minus p, and the linear combination of all these previous samples is actually linear LPC, where we are trying to superimpose all the filter coefficients, all the AIs. Okay, so I'll multiply this xn minus 2 also with other filter coefficients A2 and so on until I consider xn minus p as well, with the last coefficient of the filter as AP. It's a p order filter. Okay, sorry. Okay, then since a linear combination of all these, I need to take sum of all these multipliers. Okay, the sum that so obtained is actually the linear predictor output xn hat. Okay, this is actually the process involved in the filter process. So this is simply what I have written here, the first part as xn hat, with the conceptual I can write this block diagram. All right, so as I was saying, we are trying to minimize this prediction error. This is not simply the minimizing the error, this goes with minimizing the squared error, or least mean square error or minimum mean square error, whatever you call, will be the principle involved here. So I need to find out the error. So this average of squared errors, so this is for just one sample. There will be many samples for which there will be many errors, but I need to take the average of the squared error, okay, which is represented as EP. Okay, say EP is the average of all such errors. There are n samples per block, so its average is divided by capital N, and we have represented this error as En. So squared of all such errors in a block, taken average, will be your average of squared error. So that our job is, our objective is to minimize this EP, okay, with respect to prediction filter coefficients. Okay, our job is to find out the filter coefficients such that this average squared error is minimized. Okay, with that idea behind, we try to extend this theory, where En we have already written. This is our En, so I'll try to substitute that. This is n running from 1 to n. Okay, En squared is this complete term squared, xn minus summation k 1 to p ak times xn minus k whole square. Okay, so we need to minimize this. So minimize, as we know, with the basic principle of your calculus, I need to take the first order differentiation of this EP with respect to filter coefficient. So there are so many filter coefficients involved here. There are p amount of filter coefficients involved here. So I need to differentiate with respect to each of those filter coefficient in order to find out each of those values. And hence I can say I can differentiate with respect to, say, one coefficient in general, say AI. The first order differentiation of this will give me what? Okay, before doing that, okay, I mean, to minimize, I should take this first order derivative and equate it to 0 and find out what is the value of AI for which you'll be getting the differentiation to be 0. All right, so that EP, before differentiating, I'll try to simplify this because it involves a square term. So I can simplify this, n is equal to 1 to n. Okay, this is a minus b squared, so this is xn squared plus the second term whole squared, which is k is equal to 1 to p a k x minus n minus k whole square minus twice of this term. Okay, so this detailed, probably you may not find in any literatures, so please make sure that you understand this flow. Okay, I'm trying to not to skip any process here. Okay, so with that I'll try to differentiate with respect to a filter coefficient, say ai. So this 1 over n is as it is, summing 1 to n. The first is independent of any filter coefficient. The derivative of this first term would be naturally to be 0, and derivative of the second term, involves the filter coefficient ai. See that I am differentiating with respect to only one coefficient, but there are p coefficients here. Say this is whole square, so first differentiating this whole square term, I'll get twice of, okay, twice of k is equal to 1 to p a k times x n minus k. That's a first u square is, which is a 2u dou u by dou x kind of differentiation, and I need to differentiate now the summation of all these quantities. As you know, this is since the differentiation with respect to only ai, there will be only one term which will have a non-zero value. What is that non-zero value? Say in other words, I can say this difference, summation of k is equal to 1 to p. I'll just be more clear in what I am speaking about. Okay, so this actually, this summation term is a1 xn minus 1 plus a2 times xn minus 2 and so on, and there is some ai that we have taken, xn minus I, up to say ap xn minus p, and I'm trying to differentiate all these sums, all these terms with respect to ai. So except this term, everything else is 0. Differentiation of all other term is 0. Okay, the only term which will have a non-zero differentiation is a term involving the coefficient ai. All right, so with that idea behind, differentiation of this is simply xn minus I itself. Okay, so this will be xn minus I itself. All right, so the differentiation of the last term is similar with respect to the previous analysis, say twice of xn. Okay, here as you can see, there is no square term here, it's all summation terms, and hence with respect to the previous result, we'll also have similarly as xn minus I here. Okay, so please ask me if you have any doubts, because it's differentiation of the summation term there. Okay, remember we need to equate this to 0. Okay, so therefore we need to equate this first order differentiation to 0. So this implies, what will this give me? This 1 over n can be retained as it is. Okay, and this negative term can be taken out, and 2 gets cancelled. On the left hand side, I will have n1 to n. Okay, so ignoring 2, which is on the both the terms here, summation. The next is a inner loop, which is k1 to p a k xn minus k xn minus I. I'm taking the negative sign to the other end. So on the right hand side, you will have summation 1 to n. Okay, simply xn minus I. Okay, so this will be the end result of differentiating with respect to one particular filter coefficient. Since we have assumed that outside the stationary interval between 1 to n, we have xn is equal to 0. So we have assumed that we have assume that I will write this statement. We have assumed that xn is equal to 0, okay, outside the interval, to be specific, outside the interval 1 to n, okay. Then we can rewrite this above expression as, okay, then we can rewrite this expression as n. Anyway, xn is equal to 0, so I can take this variation from minus infinity to infinity. I know that outside 1 to n it is 0 itself, so without loss of any generality, I can take all the from infinite to minus infinity to infinity range of all these xn samples. I can write the other parameters as it is, xn minus k, xn minus I. Similarly, on the right hand side, I have minus infinity to infinity xn minus n minus I. Okay, so that I can rearrange this term on the left hand side as, I'll take the k term, the k summation outside. I mean, I'll take the inner loop on the outside, and the dependency of the subscript ak, which is the filter coefficient, okay, and what is left on the left hand side is varying between minus infinity to infinity xn minus k, xn minus I. Similarly, on the right hand side, oh, I think we missed 1 over n here. On the right hand side, this is 1 over n summation n minus infinity to infinity xn minus I. As you can observe, we'll define a new parameter to write it more simple, in a more simpler way. We'll define a parameter known as Ri hat, which is 1 over n ranging from minus infinity to infinity xn minus I. Okay, so the right hand side, since it is common on the left hand side as well of the same form, so if this is Ri hat, as you can see here, it's only the change in its subscript. Okay, so therefore the above summation can be written as, okay, above summation can be written as Ri hat, okay, which is the right hand side. On the left hand side, I have summation k running from 1 to p, okay, ak, and since it is simply a shift of say I minus k here, so n is shifted to n minus k, and your n minus I is shifted, I mean n minus I is written as it is, and n is shifted to n minus k, so only the change in the variables there, so I can write this as Ri minus k hat. Okay, so this is with respect to I ranging between 1 to p, where p is a number of filter coefficient. This expression, this particular expression, is a compact form of the representation of above equation, is known as Euler-Walker equations. Okay, so in your projects or in any applications, if you are taking speech signal processing, definitely you will revisit this in a particular piece of explanation about how, because LPC is one of the basic version of your digitizing your speech or voice signal. Okay, so everything else is modified version of. Yes, somebody is asking question.
Sir,
yeah,
how is this equal to Ri cap I minus k?
Okay,
if you fit I in I minus k, then it will become 1 by n sigma n equal to minus infinity plus infinity x of n minus I plus k.
Yeah, I'll try to explain that. Here only the subscript is changing, n is changing to n minus k. Okay, here I can say if I try to interchange this, I can say here n is I can replace here, n I can replace with n minus I, and n minus I can replace with n minus k. Do you agree with that? Here if I replace n on the right hand side with n minus I, and replace n minus I with n minus k, so this is the summation that I will be getting. So with respect to these two, as you can see, on the internally I'm actually replacing n minus I with n minus k. It's only the part I and k which actually I'm changing with respect to the subscripts. So in other words, I can say, okay, to be specific, how can I put it? Okay, if I try to expand this inside the left hand side, say for n minus infinity, say I can start from n is equal to 0 itself. What will I get? Here this will be x minus k for n is equal to 0. Yeah, give me a second. So the x minus 0, this is x minus I, then x1 minus k, x1 minus I, and so on. On the right hand side, this is actually x0, x minus I, x1, x1 minus I, and so on. As you can see, on the left hand side, if I try to take only the summation from n is equal to 0 to infinity, the first term n is 0. So for n is equal to 0, the left hand side is x minus x minus k. I'm sorry. This is x minus k. N is 0. N is 0 here. It's a product of x minus k and x minus I. The next for the next term, n is equal to 1 here. This is x n 1 minus k and x1 minus I. Similarly, there will be other terms. I'm just looking for the commonality between these two terms. The second summation, when it is running from 0 to infinity, this is x0 into x minus I plus x1 times x1 minus I, and so on. As you can see here, if this I call this as all the summation as Ri, can you see the difference between these two? It's simply the I minus k here. If I is equal to 1, if this will also be x1 minus k, and the next term, if I try to write the next term, this will be x2 times x2 minus I. Here the next term will be x2 minus k times x2 minus I. Right. So only the difference here is this term x2 and x2 minus k. Okay, which for the ith sample. So for the ith sample, I'll just replacing with I minus k here. If this is Ri, if this summation is completely Ri, I'm just changing the subscript to Ri minus k to get the left hand side of the summation.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this set of all these equations are famously known as Euler-Walker equations. As there are so many coefficients involved here, as Ri hat, although it represents a single, although it seems to be representing a single value, but it is not. As you know, there are p elements involved here. So if you take all the elements, it is simply the left hand side is a column vector. So in terms of matrix representation, okay, in matrix representation, okay, this left hand side is actually this can be written as R is equal to R hat times A, okay, where R is actually, okay, I'll try to rewrite this so that you'll know this is a matrix. So this is R matrix. So what is the order of the R matrix on the left hand side? It is simply a column matrix. We'll try to see based on the right hand side. So if I say R hat times A, there are it's a column vector. It's a column vector involving p rows and one column. This matrix R, it is varying with respect to both k and I. K is also varying between 1 to p, and I is also varying between 1 to p. And obviously this R hat is a matrix. It's a square matrix of the order p cross p, and obviously the left hand side is also a column matrix with p number of rows and one column, and hence you can say this is a crisp representation of Euler-Walker equation. as you can see, this R hat is actually a symmetric matrix because of the property that since we don't know, we have just taken only from coefficients from 1 to p. Similarly, I can flip them and I can say they will also be available for all the previous samples like a minus 1 to a minus p as well. And hence I can say this Ri, is even odd symmetric. So this is with respect to R suffix minus I. With that, I can say this is a symmetric matrix. Okay, so there is a special name for such a symmetric matrix where this is kind of a symmetric matrix where if these are diagonal elements, okay, even all these parallel to diagonal elements, even they will also be equal. Okay, so if we try to construct in practice, this is a symmetric matrix, of course, but also the elements which are parallel to diagonal are also be equal with each other. So such kind of matrix where if I try to draw a parallel line to the diagonal elements and those elements are found to be equal, such matrix is known as, actually, it need not know this, but if you are interested in MATLAB also, there is a special function itself to generate a Toeplitz matrix. Okay, so which is actually involves an efficient recursive algorithm to find out its inverse and all. Okay, so it's very easy in algorithmic implementation as well to find out its inverse. So why I'm saying inverse, because our job, our job, as you know, to get the filter coefficient. Whatever you have done, our objective is to get the filter coefficient. So the filter coefficients, okay, are obtained as you know, this is simply R hat inverse times R. Okay, so only when, if it's easy to find out the inverse of a matrix, of course a square matrix, only when if it's a non-zero matrix, then only we will be able to find out its inverse easily. And if it is turned out to be a special matrix like here as a Toeplitz matrix, the algorithm to implement its inverse will also be very simple. Okay, so after finding out the filter coefficients, as you know, we have just taken the first order of a differentiation with respect to filter coefficient and equated to 0 and got an approximation of filter coefficients. Whether we should see or we should check whether the error for these found out coefficients is minimum or not. Okay, so for this optimal choice of filter coefficients, say for these optimal choice of the predictor coefficients, okay, the squared error term, whatever you have taken earlier as EP, should be minimum, correct? So that what you have, if I try to get back to that equation of EP, whatever you have written, okay, so this was our original equation, right? So I can check here, I can rewrite this expression in a simpler way here now as EP in a matrix, or the new coefficient notation. This is simply R naught hat minus all values of RK hat. Okay, so this will give you the minimum value of the filter coefficient for all this optimum choice. Okay. So according to our model, okay, just last 5 minutes, please be with me. I'll try to wind up this. According to the speech production model, okay, the minimum that should be, which has got the mathematical equation just now I showed, is actually n is equal to 1 to n xn minus the difference between the error, the square of the error here it is difference between the actual sample and the predicted sample. The predicted sample is the linear combination of all the previous elements whatever you have written earlier. Okay, this will be minimum because of you have substituting all these filter coefficients which are taken from the Euler-Walker equations what I have written earlier, and hence I can say if you check this back the mathematical model. Okay, I'll just get back to this mathematical model. I have whatever I have drawn earlier. So with this optimum values of all these filter, the error, the square error or average square error is minimum, which is actually the input here is G times Wn, and this is the filter coefficient term, which is the optimal choice of all these coefficient. So the error involved with this will be only the first term here. As we say that the second term will give you the minimum amount of error by choosing optimum value of filter coefficients. Okay, so we will not take the second part as an error because we have optimally chosen these filter coefficients. So whatever error will be coming will be definitely from the first term, which is G times Wn, where n is one sample, and as we know we are in a block, we have taken capital N amount of samples. We have taken capital N amount of samples in each block, and obviously finally I can say the error involved in this generation of the prediction will be square of G times, I mean it is basically this is average squared, remember. So average will come with 1 over n varying from 1 to capital N, and you have taken the first term is G times Wn, and the average square error will be G square times Wn square. Okay, so if I try to normalize this, so if I try to say that, if I try to take this and bring it to 1, say if I try to normalize with this average quantity of the input signal, roughly I can say this error, the minimum error involved here is actually approximately G square, or the gain parameter is simply square root of the minimum error itself. Okay, so as I told, we are trying to quantize, or we are trying to send from the transmitter end the filter coefficient, the gain parameter, and the pitch period information as well. So from the encoder or from the transmitter end, we are going to send the information of the filter coefficients, the filter coefs, the gain parameter. Okay, and finally I will send an estimation of the pitch period as well, which is 1 over f naught. Okay, so all these can be calculated based on these previous equations. Okay. One simple approach to transmit or transform the speech data into the frequency domain, finding out the sharp peaks in the original signal spectrum. If there is a say peak, there is a peak at fundamental frequency, say f naught, we will say that pitch period is 1 over f naught. Say all these are not the actual values, these are all the estimated values. Okay, so these are all the estimated values. Okay, how will you find out the estimated values of pitch period? We will try to take the frequency domain spectrum of your speech signal, and we'll try to find out where the peaks occur. So if the peak is occurring at the fundamental frequency of f naught, we'll take the pitch period itself as 1 over f naught, and all these parameters are transmitted to the receiver, and receiver job is to do the exactly the reverse process, a synthesis process based on these values. And hence this is the complete picture of linear predictive coding or voice coding technique, where we are not be sending the actual message sample values or the quantized version of the message sample values. However, we'll be transmitting the parameters of the mathematical model itself. Okay, so the advantage of this, as a last sentence to close this session, the advantage of this is if your normal PCM system for the, speech processing, if it is taking say around 64 kbps of bit rate. Okay, so if it is taking normal standard PCM, if it is taking 64 kbps of transmission rate, your LPC coding technique, linear predictive coding technique, can scale down to as low as simply 2.4 kbps as bit rate. Okay, it will reduce, it will scale down to such a a very low value to if you are talking about the comparison between the performance of PCM and LPC systems. Okay, you can say that LPC is widely used in speech coding to reduce the bandwidth, and accordingly the bandwidth is also reduced. Okay, and if you are utilizing say multi-dimensional quantization technique, if you are not using if you are using vector quantizing technique using these LPC parameters, then again you can still bring it down. Okay, bring it down, or you can increase the bit rate to keep the good quality of the speech record. And in reality, good quality speech at a bit rate, for telecommunication purposes or mobile communication purposes, okay, you can use vector quantization with LPC, okay, which actually takes around roughly 10 kbps of data rate with superior speech quality. Okay, such is the involvement of LPC technique in various applications. Okay, yeah, we are left with just simply the last part of unit 2, which will take another 15 to 20 minutes, which is sigma delta modulator, which will also have another practical scenario with respect to digital recording or digital voice transmission. I'll take up in the next session along with few tutorial questions to solve. Any doubts? You can ask. Yeah, I know I have exceeded around 10 minutes, but I thought of closing the loop properly.
So
yeah,
how can the increasing of bit rate increase the quality? Like, we are passing only the parameters, like fixed number of parameters, gain parameter is constant. All
correct,
of them are constant. So like increasing the coefficients, can we increase the quality?
Increase the coefficient definitely increases the quality, definitely yes, because if there are more amount of order in the filter, definitely you will have more number of samples in the prediction. So more the number of samples in the prediction, obviously your prediction performance or efficiency of prediction will enhance. But only the drawback in that case is you'll have to quantize more number of filter coefficients, which will take more amount of bits per second. Only the trade-off between the more amount of filter coefficients is with respect to the bandwidth occupancy. But definitely your speech quality will be enhanced.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay.